It's about that time. It's about the time I talk about the top 5 spellcasters of 8.3 for PvP. Starting it off, this does go in order from best to worst. In the comments there will be just the five classes just pinned in the comments by me, so if you don't want to watch the video. But going over the first one, Fire Mage. We all know why it's really here. It's just really overpowered right now, and the fact you have 35% of a target's health in one button that you can just spam at all times at a 40-yard range, it's pretty nice. Some would say even useful, and some would say overpowered. Yeah, it's pretty strong. It does a lot, and if you don't interrupt it, it's just inevitable damage. So most OP arena comps are, I don't want to say focused around Fire Mage, but they definitely have Fire Mage in it. Outside from just that, we also have our general burst, and I'll just do the general Fire Mage burst here, kind of. This is wrong as well, technically. Technically wrong. I should have, like, saved a Scorch, but yeah, you can do this in PvP pretty easily, and then the dot you apply is outrageous. 6,000 damage every 1 second. That's like the same as just full Affliction Warlock dots. And then the actual damage itself is pretty decent. Looks like I did 300k. 600k in I don't know how many seconds, but really decent damage. We also have great crowd control. With Mage, you kind of have 3 spell schools of crowd control, which I think is kind of overtuned, or not overtuned, just overlooked. You have Polymorph, you have Frost with Ring of Frost, and then you have Dragon's Breath with just, you know, your normal spec damage. But those 3 spell schools are enough to just lock someone down forever. There's something really cheesy you can do where you can polymorph someone and then throw a Greater Pyroblast and then throw a Ring of Frost right on top of them as the Greater Pyroblast lands, and then you'll just get another Ring of Frost CC, and then you throw another Greater Pyroblast. Hard to set up, but when it does happen, it's, you know, it kind of kills the chance the other guy has of killing you. But aside from that, let's add on top of that crowd control with our defensives. Ice Block, Temporal Shield, and Combustion, or not Combustion, Shimmer. I'd count Shimmer as a defensive just because it's a lot of blinking around, but Combustion, if you don't know, whenever you die, I think it's like 40% health, and then whenever Cauterize procs and you do like lose that health and gain it back, you can use Temporal Shield to gain most of the healing back as well, so then you're just at like 60% health for no reason when you were supposed to be dead. And then you can always Ice Block too after that Cauterize procs. On top of that, Invis at the start of Arena is really broken with rogues right now. Sub-Rogue Fire Mage, Assassination Rogue Fire Mage. Really broken in 2s because of the setup you're allowed to do with invisibility. And then on top of that, you also have the chance to just make food and then reset if you CC the person long enough. There's a lot of reasons to play Mage. Really broken in arenas. I'd say it's more broken in arenas than battlegrounds, but anytime you put 35% of someone's max health just in an ability that someone can hardcast forever, it's going to be broken in a lot of scenarios. So that's the reason Fire Mage is really at number 1. So number 2 on the list is Destruction Warlock. I think we all know the reason behind this. I feel like Destruction's just been really good for most of the expansion. We did just receive slight nerfs to Demon Armor. That being said, I don't think it's a huge nerf really, because our Chaos Bolt just hits so hard, and that's the main reason we're broken. The general theme of the arena, and with battlegrounds I suppose as well, is just having a lot of burst damage, I'd say. And Destruction Warlock definitely fills that kind of burst damage role. We'll use our cooldowns here and kind of showcase the damage that Destruction Warlock can do. I'm not even taking Destruction Talents right here, so this is completely without Destruction Talents, by the way. But you'll see the damage. I mean, it's happening right now. How hard are the crits? 130k crits. That's without the destruction traits that buff my destruction Chaos Bolt damage. Of course, this is being allowed to free cast at all times as well, but yeah, that damage is nothing to underestimate. So the damage is crazy. You can fear spam forever, essentially. Fear spam, AoE stun with Shadow Fury. You also have Cataclysm, and there is a certain talent that increases your haste, reverse entropy, and then there's also a immolate one that increases your haste, so you have a chance to just gain a shit ton of haste, which reduces the cast time of your Chaos Bolts that much more. Cataclysm just applies immolate to everyone and triggers that haste effect and does a shit ton of damage. Going on to their more defensive abilities, you have demon armor, which was really good. 10% stamina, 150% armor, but now it's down to 5% max health and 90% armor. Still pretty good in my opinion, but I've noticed a lot of people aren't really taking it anymore. Unending Resolve makes you immune to Silence Interrupt and all those effects. 40% damage reduction on top of the already tankiness of Warlock. Destruction Warlocks also benefit from a weird, very weird mastery. You deal a random percent increased amount of damage, and then you take a random reduced amount of damage. So that reduced damage is really nice, and the additional damage is just also nice as well. You can also use Havoc on a target, and then just get, I think it's, so 40% of your max health since you're sending 2 down. So there's 1, there's 2, you gain 40% of your health. On top of that, I'd say your cooldowns are a little shorter than usual, and there is a certain trait, or an essence that you can take, that has a chance to summon your Infernals, and this will trigger your Grimoire of Supremacy effect, and pretty much just let you get little mini burst windows, and I believe it stuns as well. So just kind of overall broken, but I haven't really been able to get that trait, but when it happens to me in Arena, I'm having a lot of fun on the other side, which means it's probably pretty strong for Destruction Warlocks. So yeah, we're just really tanky. We're pretty much Fire Mages, maybe a little bit tankier, but a lot less mobile, essentially. But 1.7 second cast times Chaos Bolts that can hit up for 200,000. I'd say it's pretty worth it. That's why it's in the number 2 spot. And on to number 3. I honestly wish Elemental Shaman was a lot higher, but I do think this is the correct order in my opinion. The reason Elemental Shaman is mainly the number 3 spot is because of our ridiculous amount of armor. And on top of that armor, we have this Spectral Ghost Wolf thing, so damage taken reduced by 20%, on top of 50% physical damage reduction. And melees are really, really strong right now. But on top of that, we just do have general decent damage. I'd say our focus is more on kind of dot cleave than single target, but if you get your dots going and just get your rotation going correctly, you can do a lot of spread damage on top of decent single target damage. I'm going to try to showcase the kind of rotation you'd generally be doing. Essentially, you spread Flame Shock to everyone, and then you spam Earth Shock a shit ton, and then every now and then you press your cooldowns. And then your cooldowns essentially are Stormkeeper, which buffs your Lightning Bolt, and then you throw out that, and then pretty much just Earth Shock once you follow those 2 Lightning Bolts. And that's essentially your entire burst. But your burst, it's not as strong as, say, like Fire Mage or Destruction Warlock, but it's nothing to be laughed at, especially if you have Sky Fury Totem, Haste, Trinket, Berserking, those kind of things. It really helps. I'd say a lot of the reason that you'd play Elemental over the other classes is the tankiness to melee, and the fact that you have decent mobility and self-tankiness with Ghost Wolf. Like, the movement speed increase in Ghost Wolf is really nice with all the immobile melees, and so is the damage reduction if you're getting hit by, like, a Demon Hunter that just sticks on you. But on top of that, the main reason to play Elemental Shaman is this neat thing called Lightning Lasso. It used to be really broken, on par with, I'd say, Greater Pyroblast. And then they decided, hey, we'll keep Greater Pyroblast in the game, guys. It's a great idea here. We'll keep Greater Pyro in the game, but then we'll fix Lightning Lasso to not do percent max health damage and just completely kind of fuck over Ele Shamans. So that's kind of what happened. It's still a great ability. It still stuns for 5 seconds. Still does like 100,000 damage if you do have, you know, general haste buff, cooldowns, Sky Fury Totem, that kind of thing. But that's the main reason you'd play Elemental. Really strong there. You can run Ascendance as well, which I've never run, but I've heard in Battlegrounds it is decent because you just spam Lava Burst on cooldown. There's also a fun ability, Primal Elementalist. This is actually what you take in Arena. It essentially buffs your Earth Elemental Totem, and your Fire Elemental Totem. So you notice this guy's a little bit different. When you summon the Empowered Elementals or Primal Elementals, they have abilities, or more abilities. So the Earth Ele has a defensive. It's kind of like a shield wall that you can take. It's 40% reduced damage. You just have to make macros for these. That's the only kind of bad side to it. And then the Earthen Ele also comes with a 4-second stun. I'm pretty sure the Fire Elemental, all he does is he has like a meteor effect, kind of similar to Fire Mage. That's the only notable thing that he really does, other than just obviously cast fire spells. So that's kind of our offensive toolkit. Defensive toolkit is essentially just Astral Shift, AoE Stun, Cleanse Spirit, which can be decent against Warlocks. Earthbind Totem, Purge. Purge is really underlooked in my opinion. Especially with the Priest meta right now, I don't want to say meta, but like with Rogue Mage Priest being very dominant right now, it can be really broken against Disc Priest, purging those shields. Hex obviously is just Hex, Grounding Totem, all of that jazz. Also Counter-Strike Totem, I forget to mention, but Counter-Strike Totem, really fun. Not taken a lot, but more so for battlegrounds, it's strong than Arena, because Arena players know to just attack it immediately, but I'm pretty sure I covered the essentials there for Elemental Shaman. I'd say it's better than the following two classes, but it's not quite on par with Fire Mage and Destrolock, but still relatively strong if played correctly. So let's talk about Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest has been fairly dominant throughout BFA. Recently nerfed. Our dots got nerfed. And then over the many patches, our single target, I think, got nerfed by our shadowy aberrations, but aside from that, I'd say we're about the same as we've always been. Very strong in just dot cleave damage. Not so much mobility-wise, mobility's kind of trash, but once you go in Void form and actually get that Void Eruption off instead of interrupting your own cast, the damage really adds up over time, especially with certain talents. Certain talents in Battleground, they increase your haste by a certain amount. Certain honor talents can also increase that haste by a certain amount. And then with Corruption, you can also stack haste increases with Corruption, which I think I have one haste Corruption effect on this guy, and it is pretty nice. Also on my Warrior, but that's, you know, not what we're talking about. But yeah, Dot's pretty strong. Not as strong as they used to be, sadly, but what they used to be was just a little bit overtuned. Aside from our somewhat underpowered normal damage, we have a lot of utility. I'd say that's the main reason Shadow Priest is on here, just a shit ton of utility. Shadow Mend is really decent off heals. I'll just heal this random guy, see how much it heals for. 42,000. That's a decent heal compared to, say, Enhancement Shaman, where it's an instant cast, but it heals for about 20,000. That healed for double the amount. So decent self-heals. You have a stun, 4-second stun. You also have a silence, 4-second blanket silence. One of the only blanket silences in the game. You have Power Word Shield, which is just a general absorb that you can pretty much spam. Void Form again, increase damage. Greater Fade pretty much makes you immune to damage. You can Greater Fade and then spam Shadow Mend on someone and kind of just be able to do that for free. You can mind control people off bridges, off of objectives, off the middle of Eye of the Storm. Mind control has many uses. Dispersion, I'd say, is one of the main strong points to Shadow Priest. Reduced damage, no insanity drain. I was just going to say resource, but I actually thought of the name. No resource drain, movement speed increase, castable while stunned, fear to silence. You can use it whenever you really want. Really strong there. Vampiric Embrace, it can be really strong in 2v2s, especially with Rogue Shadow Priest being one of the comps. You're just left to cast. You essentially just do damage and then heal with the damage you're doing, and it just heals the teammates. Also strong in 3s. Shadow Fiend, not as great as it used to be, but again, still just an offensive cooldown. Leap of Faith, another utility. You grab someone, bring them towards you. Really strong in arenas as well. And I'd say main reason Shadow Priest is above Balance Druid right here. This neat ability, Mass Dispel, gets rid of bubbles. Kind of just fucks over a lot of teams. It's really nice. You should definitely use this ability if you're a priest. If you use this right before Pally bubbles, you can just use it. Pally say bubbles right before you get the cast off, and then Pally just instantly has no bubble, and then just kind of panics, and then your team finishes it off. But yeah, that's Shadow Priest. Not as good as it used to be, but still very strong in the right hands. Now we talk about Balance Druid. Balance Druid is on here. I'd say for the most part Battlegrounds. You can arena on Balance Druid, but it's not going to be the most fun time. Destruction Warlock, any Mage spec really will outperform the Balance Druid any day. But let's talk about the pros of Balance Druid. It's really easy to apply your damage over time spells. It's just 2 globals. One of the damage over time spells, if there was just a lot of people stacked up, you can essentially just use Sunfire get everyone applied with Sunfire, and then just go about your normal rotation. The main reason I'd say you play Elemental, or sorry, Balanced Druid, the main reason I'd say you play Balanced Druid is because of your on-call DPS. I really like the general on-call playstyle that Balanced Druid has with their burst, especially with Berserking and Battlegrounds. In Arena, it can be pretty devastating as well if you do start off in cat form and are able to get a decent setup on someone. I'd say you play Balanced Druid more so for its overpowered single target than anything. But once your burst is over, I'd say that's where the main problem occurs. You kind of just sit there and really hope for decent astral generation, rune power generation, resource generation, whatever it's called. You're really just sitting there hoping for decent resource generation and hoping not to get focused. In Battlegrounds it shines obviously because of the damage over time it does, but in arenas when there's very limited targets and you're trying to actually crowd control people, it can be somewhat troublesome to get your normal rotation off outside of your burst. Aside from that, let's talk about some more pros to it. Moonkin Aura just gives you spell crit really nice with, say, Shadow Priest in 2s. I know Shadow Priest, Balanced Druid, Resto Shaman, I think is a decent class, or a decent class combo. Thorn's really good for melee. You also have a Disarm with Fairy Swarm, which you can use for Battlegrounds. I find sometimes for Battlegrounds I like using Fairy Swarm. There's also Cyclone. The one bad part to Cyclone is I'd say the 25-yard range to it compared to most crowd controls where it's either a 30 or 40-yard range. Kinda sucks, especially since we're supposed to be a caster, but it is nice they give us some form of spammable crowd control. The main downfall to, I'd say, Balanced Druid compared to, say, all the other classes that I've listed is with Balanced Druid you have to be in Boomkin form most of the time to do decent damage. Obviously the main counter to this is just kind of sit the Balanced Druid. And if you're sitting or getting sat on as a Balanced Druid, you can't cast Moonfire in bear form anymore, so you can't get that Moonfire damage off, so there's really nothing you can do other than just sit in bear form and hope they go away. Certain talents help with this, with, say, Celestial Guardian, where you take increased healing and take reduced damage, or, you know, Disarms or Thorns or something like that. But they're still just kind of gonna sit on you and not let you get your damage off. You can counter this by running, like, say a Warlock or something, just get them to fear off you and then go about your normal rotation, but the kind of sit on the Druid playstyle is enough to make me not want to play Balanced Druid in Arena, and more so play Feral in Arena, where you can just run away from that kind of shenanigan. Yeah, Balanced Druid, it's good for Battlegrounds. I'd say it's really fun for Battlegrounds. For Battlegrounds, in my opinion, I like Balanced Druid more than Shadow Priest, but Shadow Priest is just more viable in Arena, so that's why it's above here. But I'd say they're most part on the same playing field, just Shadow's a little bit better for Arena. But Balanced Druid is really nothing to be laughed at, especially, again, in the right hands. I've been one-shot by Balanced Druids plenty of times in Battlegrounds. You just don't expect 3-star surges to hit you for 70,000, so that's the main reason Balanced Druid is on this list, Star Surge. If you guys like the video, thumbs up, subscribe, description, bell thing. Check out Twitch, check out Twitter, hit the thumbs up button, all of that jazz. Until next time, guys, take it easy.